You are listening to the One Day at a Time podcast. On this podcast, my guests share their stories of alcoholism, addiction, and how they recovered so that you can too. My hope is that you find the inspiration and resources you need to let go of what's holding you back so that you can transform into the person you were always meant to be. Ready? Here we go. Hello, loves. Thank you for downloading the podcast. My name is Arlena, and I'll be your host. Today, my guest is Kate Bailey. She is the co-author of Love Yourself Sober, a self-care guide to alcohol-free living for busy mothers. And she is also the co-founder of lovesober.com. I had such a great time talking to Kate. She is amazing, and she has so much wisdom to share that I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. And if you'd like to hear more episodes like this one, along with recommendations for books, meditations, and other recovery resources that I discover on the interwebs, just visit odatchat.com and subscribe to the weekly newsletter. So there you have it. Please enjoy this conversation with Kate. Well, Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, I'm super excited to talk to you. I know Mandy Mather. She actually had me on your podcast, as you know. And she and I were in the same coaching class, so that was super fun. That's how we met. And I'm so excited I get to meet you and talk to you about your book.
Yeah, because it's not long been out in the States. I think it was just about a month. Yeah.
A month. That is so exciting. Listen, I have so many questions for you about the book. It's called Love Yourself Sober, a self-care guide to alcohol-free living for busy mothers. And, busy moms. Oh, there it is.
I was waiting for you to look up.
Super cute cover. Who designed
really
the cover?
bright. Do you know, I don't know, someone in the publishing house, but I love it. I love those yellows. It does pop. Yeah. Oh, look, I'm matching too.
And your glasses too. Yeah, I can see if you're not watching this on YouTube. Yes, Mandy is matching her book, red glasses and all. So cute. Was that deliberate?
Kate. I'm Kate.
Oh, what did I say? Oh my God.
Do you know we keep doing this? It's like we've become the same person. And if sometimes we're on the like we're talking to someone, both of us on the pod, and someone will say, "How are you?" to me, I'll just go, "Oh, we're fine." Like we
need to we need to ship your names, like how like Brangelina. We'll do Kate D or I don't know how that works. Man Kate? No, that doesn't sound right.
Candy.
Candy.
There you go. We've done it. We're shipped.
You were shipped. Y'all see how brilliant? I told you English people are smarter. It's an accent. Oh my gosh. Okay, yes. So this is such an important book because what's so funny, not funny, but peculiar is that people, when they are struggling with recovery, they hate themselves, right? And it's like you can't hate yourself well. Right?
No.
It's like trying to run a marathon with a broken leg. And so the reason your book is so brilliant, Love Yourself Sober, it's like that's how it has to be done, And I don't know about you, like when I first got sober, I would go to these rooms and people would say things like, "Oh, we're going to love you until you can love yourself." And I was like, well, somebody's got to, because it ain't me.
It's so true, isn't it? And it was definitely that piece. It was the sort of the self-care, the self-love. It definitely started almost outside in for me, that journey.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the internal resources. So when I discovered self-care and sober treats and filling my toolkit, that's when I started to build my capacity. So it's definitely an outside in journey. And that's what changed my recovery and my sobriety for me, 100%. Yeah.
Outside in. Yeah. I have just found that there's just a million ways to do it. And I bristle at people who are like, "Oh, all you have to do is this. And that's all you have to do,"
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. But that's a personal issue. So, what I thought we would do is start with a fun little game I'm calling the lightning round, and I'll just ask you a few questions, and it doesn't have to be fast answers. You can answer as quickly or as slowly. But your book is obviously going to be an amazing resource. But when you first got sober, what books were really helpful to you?
I loved, I got sober with Soberistas, which is an online forum which launched about 8 years ago. So before that, there was nothing that I could access that appealed to me at all. And so Lucy Rocker, who founded Soberistas, wrote a book called The Sober Revolution. And it was the first book that I'd ever read that referred to the kind of relationship with alcohol. So rather than it, like you said, being a prescribed way or received messages, I mean, we've moved on a long way in the UK in the conversation. And this really, she likened it to a bad boyfriend, a destructive relationship. And that was hugely, that just spoke to me. I was like, oh yeah, that's me. And the other one I really liked at the time was Jason Vale's, how to kick drinking easily, I think it was, because that looked at calling BS on the kind of social piece and the brainwashing around it. Right. So that was super helpful to me. It was unpicking all the messaging, really helped me.
Yeah, that's great. I was talking to Claire Pooley, and she said the same thing. She also mentioned Jason Vale's book, and I was like, so did you stop drinking easily after that? And it was like, well, it's
no,
a process.
It was, yeah. I mean, I read those. I quit for a year straight off once I'd found Soberistas and read those two books. I was like, that's it. And I did go back after a year, which is another part of the story, which is then where the self-care piece came in and all the other stuff. So, but okay. Yeah, it was definitely part of the toolkit.
Yeah, I have lots of questions about relapse stuff. I mean, I feel like everybody who's tried to quit has struggled with the stopping part, obviously. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Do you have a go-to mantra or quote that you find yourself coming back to?
I do. I love the one that really got me out of some hot water, and I find myself repeating it quite a lot. Not so much to myself, but when with clients maybe who are struggling, and when we are generating mantras, and it was I haven't come this far to only come this far. Because I was like, that. Yeah, right? Yeah. Like in all senses. Yeah, like what's the next bit look like? Yeah. What is the next bit gonna look like?
I haven't come this far to only come this far.
Yeah. That's fighting talk.
Them are fun words. That's awesome. Okay, and do you have a regular self-care routine? Like, do you have like a morning routine, or do you think of it more in terms of like a weekly schedule?
God, do you know what? This is a really good question, and it's something that has really evolved for me. And one of the reasons why I've realized I have a really elaborate self-care practice, and one of the reasons is because of my dysregulation, because of what I believe is now some neurodiversity, so some sensory processing, anxiety. I identify as a highly sensitive person. So I need a lot of external resourcing in terms of routine, boundaries, not taking on too much, checking my diary and then taking a third off. Wow. I do. Yeah.
I mean, and then take a third
off. That is my aim. I don't always manage it, but that is my intention, because I always overestimate what I can do and then get stressed out. Yeah. So I know if I take a third off, I'm getting in the right area. So I do a lot of yoga. I love yoga, but we've been in lockdown in the UK, so I'm doing online yoga classes, but I usually go to a yoga studio where I also work. I'm not a yoga teacher, but I help out. That's my contribution to the community. What else? And I mean, I know what is also in my routine is Netflix.
Is that your downtime?
That honestly, it is literally like if I watch an episode of whatever it is I'm into, because, I get I get a bit annoyed and a bit bored when everything has to be like all you, because I do love yoga, right? And I do meditate, but I hate it when things get too worthy, because as modern busy women, we still need quick fixes and modern things. Like, so if I'm rewatching, don't tell anyone, I'm rewatching Downton Abbey at the moment.
I just finished down to a second round.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah,
Love
it's
Downton.
so soothing. So, like, if I watch an episode of Downton Abbey, I literally switch off. I'm not thinking about me. I'm not thinking about the kids. I'm not thinking about, it really is. So yeah. So a bit of Netflix. What else?
Have you actually been to Downton Abbey?
No, it's up north. We would say it's up north in the UK, because I'm down south.
You're south.
Not in terms of what you're used to. It's like probably only about 4 hours drive, but for us it's I couldn't possibly. It's like a different universe. But I really want to. So when things open up again in the UK, I have to, because it's beautiful, isn't it?
Please do. Take pictures for me.
All right. Yeah, will do.
Check it out, Arlena. I made it. Okay, yeah. So the self-care, it sounds like you have lots of self-care in terms of, where are you with the higher power situation?
Well, it's complicated. Like, this is a kind of how long have you got,
like your Facebook
kind of question. So I had religious trauma as a child, right? Okay. God, we've got loads in common, right, with our chickens and our religious trauma.
First chickens. Have you heard of the term super churched?
No. No, but were you super churched?
I was super churched. I interviewed this lady who was the pastor's daughter. Oh, girl, yeah. Those poor, they go one of two ways. They're either super good or they're like me.
I love that. Yeah.
And so anyway, it sounds like you were super churched to some extent.
Yeah. And
Catholic?
I do. No, interestingly, but it was, and my parents weren't, but that's a whole other story. But my aunt was a born again Christian, and I got really into that for various reasons. Sure. But it became really dark for me. So I managed to sort of remove myself from all of that through education. And when I did my A-levels, so I went to college and started studying philosophy and comparative religion, I was able to unpick it. I unpicked it intellectually, but there was still a lot of that fear and that trauma. So I couldn't go anywhere near. So I tried to go to traditional AA stuff, like the first time, I think, when I was about 27. And I understand now that was like re-traumatizing me.
Yeah.
So there was nothing. This is why I mentioned Soberistas, because it was like, what's the first thing I could access, right? Because like they were not safe space for me, but I had no idea. That that's what was going on till fairly recently, actually, when I started looking at what trauma is. So I'm not great with higher power. No, but having said that, who's this? So we had a lovely one as a friend of ours, a dear sober sister called Rachel Welford, who's she does meditation and stuff and gong baths. Oh, nice. And she said she called me spiritually slutty because I basically love anything to do with ritual religions, but in a kind of, I'm very interested and I like to play with them. So it's a funny one. It's a yes and no. It's like I'm not in, I suppose, a traditional higher power person, but I just think we're connected to something, the universe, and something much, much greater, just because for the size of it. It's like, right. Well, of course there's something bigger because it's bigger. So I don't feel complicated about it. Yeah. As long as it's on my terms, that's for me. Well,
I mean, it needs to make sense, right?
Yeah.
Like that was always the thing for me, is like it needs to make sense. It doesn't. There's a lot of things in organized religion that don't really make sense. But you know, have you ever heard of Carolyn Myss? She was
No.
on Oprah, and they on one of those. Do you ever watch those Super Soul Sunday episodes?
Do you know I haven't?
They're really
I've just
good.
been too busy watching Downton Abbey. Or Dallas, or The Walking Dead. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Did you
I've
get
been
into Game of Thrones?
Oh my God, I didn't know what I was going to do when Game of Thrones ended because I loved it too much.
Yeah, there are some books and some movies and TV series that when they end, I'm just devastated.
Yeah.
Where are my friends? Yes. Totally religiously slutty, but that is hilarious. But I was going to tell you about Oprah and the conversation she had with Carolyn Miss, because Carolyn Miss gave one of the best explanations that really resonated with me. She said that God is law, meaning like gravity, law of attraction, cause and effect. I'm a little nerdy with like quantum physics, like the theory of entanglement, and there's some great Netflix series on entanglement if you're ever interested. I think
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's framed under the title of something about quantum physics, which sounds super nerdy, but it explains a lot of things, very practical things. Like, have you ever like thought about somebody random, and then they call you or you get an email or something, and you're like, whoa, I was just thinking about you.
Yeah,
that kind of explains it through the theory of
that sounds very. Yeah, well, I'm going to look that up.
You'll like it. You'll like it.
Yeah,
I could tell you're a science girl because we're going to talk about the autonomic system and some other things, neuroscience. Love me some science, because it's like you don't have to have faith; we have evidence, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
we do, and that experience. It's a funny subject. I mean, I think experientially, even though it was difficult for me as a teenager, what I used to do is go to my room and I used to pray and I used to meditate for 2 hours on my own. Wow. And I used to get so high. I always said that when I experimented with drugs like as a late teen and early 20s, and I was a bit like, I'm not really going to bother with them because I just used to they didn't get me as high as meditation used to.
Wow.
And prayer. I don't know what that's all about, but I mean, that's the kind of saving grace, I suppose. I mean, I definitely took to alcohol. That was my drug of choice.
That was your drug of choice. Okay, we'll have to get into that. I think I only have a couple more things. What's one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober? Like, is there anything that sticks out as like, gosh, it would have been nice to know?
Yeah, I wish I had known all the kind of the holistic, the self-care toolkit.
Holistic self-care, that's good. Yeah, body, mind, and spirit, right? We need to take care of all of them. And then what do you do for fun? We talked about chickens a little earlier. Okay. We both had chickens.
I love my chickens so much. Because we've decided you had chickens, but you haven't got them.
I don't have them anymore. Yeah, we moved and I couldn't bring them, but they're beautiful. What kind? And so talk about what kinds you have, because there's so many varieties most people don't know.
Yeah. So I have a Dutch Barnfelder, who is we've called Fräulein Angelina. You'll know this with Downton. My daughter's Buff Orpington. They've got 2 Buff Orpingtons that have got the big fluffy bottoms and their fluffy legs. They're hilarious.
They're hilarious, especially when they run.
Yeah, they're on wheels or something. They're amazing. So my daughter's one is blonde and she's called Lady Edith. And you'll know that because of Downton Abbey. Yeah.
Oh man, I thought that girl was never going to get her day.
No, so true. I can't remember that because I've watched it before, and I watched it when I was sober, and it's getting to that interesting part with her where that editor has gone off. But and I genuinely can't remember what happens to her.
Oh, so I'm not gonna. I don't.
Even though I've watched it all before.
I won't spoil it for you. I know that's the benefit of getting a little older is you forget things and then you're like, oh, that's right. That's amazing. Surprised and happy all over again.
Oh,
Do you know I had a Polish chicken that had one of those big fluffy hats?
Yeah.
We called her Lady Gaga.
Amazing.
So
Amazing.
silly. So silly.
Yeah.
Well, that is a lot of fun. The chickens are fun. It sounds like your kids like them too.
Yeah. So we do that. And I also, when things are open, I do musical theatre.
Do you sing?
I do sing. That's how I met my husband. We were in a band together years and years ago. And now I don't, because that was all very I thought I was really cool. And we had this band and we gigged and we were all like proper musicians. And then I discovered the love of absolutely ridiculous, frivolous musical theatre. And I've got a local group that I do. So.
Oh my gosh. Do you have anything recorded? Because if you do, you must send me some links.
I wonder if I do. I don't think we do. We might do. I'll have a look. Yeah.
My son in high school was obsessed with he was at like the stage. He did like sound and stage prop. He built things and oh my gosh, it's such a fun world to be in. I had no idea.
It's great. And it's lovely doing the amateur stuff because as somebody told me, and I love this because amateur gets this, like, you know, I don't know what it's like in the States, but if you say, oh, you're just an amateur, it's all
no pressure.
Yeah, well, exactly. The love of the amateur. But, you know, it's almost like code for a bit shit, you know, if it's amateur, right? Which, yeah, maybe. But somebody said, one of our old directors said, amateur comes from the French for the love of. Because it comes from the word amour, and it is, we do it for the love of.
For the love of it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
Got to have some fun, right? And I think you've probably experienced that too, is when people first get sober, they're like bored out of their minds. You know, their whole dopamine reward system is skewed, shall we say?
Yeah. And that's why you need that. Yeah, you need the holistic thing. You need the happy hitch. You need the sober treats. You need the silly things. Yeah, you need all the resources, right?
Lots of resources. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about resources and the book, obviously. But maybe we could talk a little bit about your story. Do you want to just take a few minutes to walk us through the things that people they tell me that they love to hear is, you know, it sounds like you started drinking and doing drugs kind of young, and but what people really want to know is like what made you finally decide to quit. You know, I have some coaching clients that are like the spouse of the alcoholic, and you know, they just need a little hope that it's possible that maybe their spouse is gonna quit. So anyway, but you want to just start with I'm always curious about like family of origin as well.
Well, again, I think I've pieced a lot of this together over the last few years in terms of self-study and recovery, and knowing Mandy and talking to her most days. And she's a great mental health advocate. So I've learned a lot about my own mental health journey as part of this, which I wasn't really aware of. Okay, so I was very anxious. I had, you know, various ACEs growing up. And my father, I'd say, identified as traditionally what I always identified an alcoholic as, in terms of, you know, pretty much wheels off the wagon kind of stuff.
Was he violent or just absent? Or?
No, just absent. Yeah, just absent. And I feel sorry for him now because he was a sailor. And in those days, you didn't get any leave to see your family. You were away on the boats, on ships for months on end. And they used to get paid in tots of rum. So they literally were enabling these poor young men who were away from their families in really cramped conditions, giving them alcohol. So, and no mental health support and no awareness of neurodiversity at that point, any kind of autistic spectrum, ADHD, highly sensitive, nothing. So, you know, I'm understanding that through a more compassionate lens, I think, you know.
Yeah.
didn't really know him. And then I was very anxious. And like I said, I sort of took to the kind of religion as my first drug of choice, I would say, to try and self-soothe in a very anxious mind. And then again, later on, I've sort of identified as highly sensitive. And through parenting my son, who is now, we realise, has ADHD and is on the autism spectrum, obviously that allowed a mirror into me and in my family and that sort of genetic piece, and realised that this runs through generations. And so there was, I really feel like that's a massive piece, like we said, in the recovery conversation in alcohol use disorder, addictive behaviours piece is that neurodiversity. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later. But for me, I don't know if you heard the kind of phrase, the sort of grey area drinking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, that very much looked like me in that it looked pretty normal on the surface. Nothing, there were no particular issues. My husband wasn't worried. None of my friends just thought I was paranoid. Just thought I was absolutely batshit crazy, that I was even worrying about it because everyone was getting pissed at the weekends. So there was this kind of normative drinking culture in Britain where if you are in that sort of on the alcohol use disorder spectrum earlier on, and hazardous and harmful but not dependent, which is where I was.
Harmful but not dependent. Yeah,
harmful and hazardous but not dependent. So earlier on on the alcohol use disorder spectrum,
right.
What you basically get mirrored back with when if you go to your doctor, if you go to a counsellor, if you go to your friends, people will generally tell you haven't got a problem because you're doing what's normative, right? They don't know, and maybe you don't know underneath that it feels like a crisis. It feels devastating to you. It feels hard work, like you're thinking, you're planning, you're trying not to do it, you're regretting waking up at 3 a.m. with anxiety, but maybe only drinking twice a week. So that was kind of where I was. It was like this awful toxic relationship with it, hence why Lucy Rocker, the bad boyfriend. But nothing that anyone outside could particularly put their finger on. But I had this just feeling of landslide, I was like, what I'm also getting mirrored to me is, so the normative drinking culture, or the alternative, which is like AA or some of the traditional recovery, which telling me I have to reach a rock bottom, telling me I'm powerless. And I'm like, well, no, that doesn't fit either. But if there is no early intervention, if there was no entry points to recovery earlier, then I might end up down there. But I don't want to wait for that. I don't want to wait. So there's a lot of fear. There was a lot of confusion. And there was a lot of what looked like normal. And there was a lot of beating myself up. And I'd say that was going on from my late 20s through my early 30s, through to my mid 30s. And I sort of managed my mental health by a mixture of kind of hot yoga. I was always working out. I had enough resources that alcohol was one of them. And when I became a mum, we moved to a new town, and I moved away from all my friends. My husband was working in London as a journalist. I'd stopped working in London as a journalist. So I was literally at home, stuck on my own, not knowing anyone, bored, lonely, tired, angry. I wasn't hungry, but I had all the other frickin' triggers. And it literally was, now I understand that's why alcohol, I think, danced centre stage at that point, because there were no other resources for me. Wow. I couldn't get to meetings because I didn't have the childcare. Like, there is no support in the UK for you unless you are totally up shit creek, right?
Wow.
So it's changed a lot, but I think that's why the rise of the sober forums in the UK has gone stratospheric. There are so many. It's because necessity is so often the mother of invention. And it's like, and it's also no mistake, I don't think, or no coincidence that many of them are women led. It's like women are really leading the kind of new alternative patchworks to recovery, right?
Right.
So that was it. So I found Soberistas. I tried to stop every week. I was like, I'm never drinking again. Every Sunday morning, I was like,
were you just waking up with headaches and like hungover and feeling bad about like maybe not paying attention to the kids and that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So it was very much that. Yeah, and just feeling really guilty about, just all of it. I always say that there was this kind of dichotomy in me between, there was this healthy Kate who wanted to go for her goals and kind of really wanted to, I've always, wanted that kind of health, happiness, sort of quite high vibing.
Yeah.
And then there was this kind of, this kind of destructive thing with the hedonism, the coping with the anxiety with drinking and then not being able to control that. And then so there were these two bits to me, and I would go between the two. Oof. And I think what motherhood did was just open that chasm even more. It was like, none of this is fitting with my values about how I want to be, and what if they need to go to hospital and my husband's at work and I've had a couple of glasses of wine in the evening. I can't, but I didn't know how to chill out. I didn't know how to relax. I didn't know how to kick back. And also we've got mummy wine culture which is massive.
So
saying, of course, you need mummy juice, at 7:00. So it was very confusing. Yeah. It was so confusing. So when I found Soberista, I was like, someone's thrown me a lifeline. That's it. I'm in. And I was ready, willing and able, not feeling like I was able 100%, but I was going to give it my darndest, So that was the beginning.
That was the beginning. How old were you when you started drinking?
16, I think.
Yeah, just like a typical, let's try this out kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I was such a good girl, I did start smoking and I did drink, but I was so didn't do it until it was, actually it's 18 in the UK for alcohol, but everyone does when
everyone's drinking a lot.
Everyone did when they were, especially for my generation, when you could fake all your ID and just no one asked.
So. Nobody cared.
No.
That's funny. Okay, so you get sober and you go through the Soberistas. Did you experience, and you're married at this time, right?
Yeah, so we got married. I've been with my husband 25 years now, I think.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
My husband and I, you must have been young when you met him.
Oh, we were in our 20s, yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but my husband and I got together in I met him when he was 24, and he seems like my son is almost 21, and I was like, oh my God, he's a baby. So I can't believe we were so young when we got together. But
I can't believe it. Oh yeah, my husband was 23 when I met him.
Wow, we do have a lot of parallels. That's so funny. So, okay, so you get sober. How did he feel about you getting sober? Was he like, oh, what about hot sex? Is that gone?
Yeah. So there was definitely that. And there was this, he was so bored of me saying that he was just stop moaning. So what I decided to do is I decided not to tell him for about a month. I just did it because I wanted to say to him, this is serious this time. I haven't been doing it, and that this is what I'm up to. Rather than say, I need your help to do this, I just was like, by the way, I'm doing this. and I said I did tell him after about 3 weeks, I think, because I was on my phone or my tablet all the time to Soberistas, and I thought he might think I was having an affair. So I thought, well, I better tell him. Because I was never on it before, right? I was going back nearly 10 years. Social media wasn't what it is.
Right. He's
so anyway,
He's like, you
Who are
cheating
you
on
chatting
me?
to?
Did he ask you, or did you just share it?
No, I just caught him looking at me kind of, and I was like, look, just by the way, this is what I'm doing, and I'm on this forum. It felt very risky, though. It really did. Like, I think one of the hardest things for that portion of drinkers, I'd say that, one of the hard things is that there's a lot of fear for you and of the relationship changing. Right. And the fun going and the what are we going to do? And we have had to kind of reinvent things,
Yeah, you have to readjust a little bit.
You do, don't you?
Yeah. I met my husband sober, but that's the one thing I hear a lot. It's like, well, what do you do if your husband still drinks? That's a thing. People, everybody has to adjust. So your adjustment period was okay?
Yeah, and I think what you realise as you go down the line is that is symptomatic of how important alcohol has become in your own head and your own life. Because once it isn't, it's like, well, we'll do loads of different things. We go walking, we walk the dog, we go out for dinner, we go on holiday, do you know what I mean? We do loads of stuff. We don't do anything at the moment because we're in lockdown. But that's a whole other thing. We just try and find space, all of us, just going to our different corners of the house, going, all right, I'm just going. But that's the fear. And I think that really goes with time, because you realise as alcohol diminishes its grip and it becomes less and less important, it's like, well, I don't know. I can't even remember drinking with him now, which is
Isn't that funny?
great.
So he doesn't drink that much?
He drinks a bit, but
it doesn't bother you.
No, I never did care, to be honest, because I was always like, this is mine. I don't want anyone else to be part of it, because if they are, they'll knock me off. It's mine. I want to be in control of it. Right. And I called it my little sober flame, that I was just going to go like that to
protect it.
Protect it, and it's mine. Otherwise, if someone else gets too near it, they could blow it out, and I'm not going to let them.
Right. That's taking full responsibility of your recovery, and I think that's amazing.
I guess that is right.
So what were some of the things that you learned in the Soberistas early on?
Well, the connection, how important connection is. And again, I didn't realise that at the time, because all of my recovery that has happened since I then, I said I went back to drinking, because I hadn't got the toolkit. I hadn't got the tools for living. So all the bad old habits crept back in. But the main thing that I got there was that connection, and that just literally rinse, repeat, day in, day out, one day at a time, right? Just that sort of some of the habit change muscle power behind me. I definitely had that. But I didn't have the tools about nervous system regulation. I did not know anything about self-compassion. I went on to study the science of happiness, and that really changed my life and my entire outlook on what it is to be human, because they look at all the keys of happiness and what's right with us about our pro-social natures, gratitude, compassion, self-compassion, or that side we were talking about, higher power, and awe for me has always been a big thing, looking at the night sky, forest walks, but actually starting to skillfully incorporate all of those things and work with them and develop them as resources. I started to get better properly, like my mental health got better. I was able to take a third off my list.
Yeah. Did you say Science of Happiness?
Yeah, it's called The Science of Happiness. And it's basically an online course you can do at Harvard and Berkeley with the EDX platform. So it's a MOOC, a modular online course, over about 10 weeks. And it's evolutionary theory and neuroscience around what it is to be mammalian, pro-social, and affect about the 16% of happiness that we can actually do something about. It's just a fabulous course. And it was that then I realized there's a lot of people on forums talking about similar things.
Right.
So it was at that point where I was like, you know what, I'm going to train as a coach. I don't see any courses that I like, so I'm going to do a grounding in life coaching, like a 2-year diploma in life coaching. Then I'm going to build my own course and my own package that incorporates positive psychology and the science of happiness, because I think that's what we need.
Oh, yeah.
So that was my journey. And in between all of that, I sort of met Mandy and started our work together. But,
you guys are doing brilliant work. You have the, you guys are co-founders of lovesober.com, Change Your Relationship with Alcohol. I know you have courses and coaching and a community with accountability. Brilliant. I just love it. I love what you guys are doing.
Oh, it's just, you know what, that whole one thing that we feel really passionate about. Sorry, I'm sort of like veering off in different directions. But that idea of community connection, collaboration, which I know that She Recovers is so brilliant at. But Mandy and I, because we're both busy moms, we could not be doing the work that we're doing if we weren't collaborating. And also then we have certain people in our community that help as well, and we're a sort of more collective and a community interest company, basically.
Right.
So so all of this kind of growth, I mean, I think one of the keys for me, and I don't really know how to explain it other than this was like a seminal moment for me, and it was the last time I drank. It's my last day one, touch wood, don't take it for granted, but it was my last day one, and I had gone through the whole shall I, shan't I, shall I, shan't I. I'd stopped drinking 5 months and I'd have a drink, then I'd stop again for a few months and I'd go. And I went up to London. It was my sister-in-law's 40th birthday. And anyway, to cut a long story short, I did end up drinking. And I woke up in the morning and it was a beautiful hot sunny day and I was paralyzed with fear. It was like the darkness had come on me so badly I could barely move for the shame. It was like I was fucking broken, like, and I don't know why, particularly that particular night. I don't know, mate, I was just done, right?
Yeah, it's a funny thing when you just know that you're done.
I was so done, and so I couldn't go back. It took me hours and hours and hours to get home, because there was only a couple of stops on the tube to my train station to then get me home. And all I wanted to do is get home to my family. I was just like, I've got to go home. But I couldn't get on the tube because I was having such bad panic attacks. So I had to get a bus. And I was just a hot, sweaty mess. And then I managed to get home. I sat on the beach. We went to the beach. It was this beautiful day. And I just felt like a shell. I felt like I was in hell, even though what my vista was like heaven. It was like everyone that I loved. It was awful. And that late afternoon, I went back and people had been talking to me about Tara Brach and the reign of self-compassion, right? So I finally... Is it? Oh, so yeah, I watched her hour-long thing on YouTube, and then I did the reign of compassion, self-compassion, recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. And at that point, all I can say, it was like I witnessed my own suffering and I went down into the valley of death. It was like I'd never been there before, but I just was like, it was like, okay, there is no resistance to this. I'm now there, and I accompanied myself in my darkest hour. I made contact, right? And this is going to sound a bit woo, but I had that eureka moment. I was like, there I am. That's me. I'm here. And I was like, oh my God, when I drink, I disconnect. And it's like this. I disconnect from myself and I feel such incredible shame. I can't find myself for a whole week to even begin to comfort. And I'm never doing that to myself again. I am never going to do that again. And I ran out and I told my husband, I was like, I've got it. This is why I don't drink. And I explained it to him and he went, I get it now. He was like, totally. So it was once I could articulate it, he was like, I get it. That's awful for you. I'm so sorry. And of course you mustn't, you know? So that was it.
That's so interesting. What you're describing. I talk about this to women all the time about setting boundaries. It's like, first, you have to know what it is you feel and what it is you want before you can articulate it to somebody else. Right.
Yeah.
And it's so important to reconnect to self. And I love how you describe that feeling, because it is about total disassociation, total disconnection out of survival, to be fair, right? It's a survival skill, but it does not translate to healthy adulthood.
No.
That's amazing.
And I didn't know that. And now, thank you. Yeah. And I thank you for letting me share it and talk about it. Because it's good for me to remember,
That's the story. Like, that's what people are like, oh, that was it. That is the turning point.
That's the moment. Yeah. And it is. And now I understand about that sort of shutdown and that disassociation. Essentially, that's what it was. And that's what, whenever I had gone to, say, somewhere else, like trying to go to a meeting, it would push me further because of that was the core of the disassociation, right? There was trauma there. There was religious trauma. There was ACEs. There was all of the rest of it.
What's
so you're going
to...
adverse childhood experience. So it could be divorce, addiction, abuse, poverty, all of those. The ACEs studies show that the more of those you have, the more likely you are to have a mental health or substance use disorders, poor outcomes. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So that was it. And and I always say that the whole of my sort of fascination after that with self-care and what led us to write the book, really, the whole of that journey was that process. Recognize, okay, this is what's going on. Let's name it. Let's name it to tame it. What's going on? Investigate. Well, allow. Okay, I'm not going to shut it down. I'm not going to numb out. Investigate. Okay, we can have a look. Where's it showing up in the body? How's it feeling? What's the texture of it? Where is it happening? And then the last bit, which I didn't know, like I could name things, but I didn't know then how to nurture. And that is the self-care, right? That is those bits, those are the resources inner or outer to soothe ourselves, to look after ourselves, to answer our needs, to set boundaries. That's the nurture bit. And for me, that was the bit I needed to not only get sober, but to stay sober and to love being sober.
Yeah, to stay sober. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. I always relate it to like a muscle, right? You wouldn't go to the gym once and expect to stay in shape forever, right? It's something that you need to continue to work on. For sure. Yeah,
isn't it just?
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier about the Irene Lyon. You were learning lots of cool... Okay, we're going to talk about two things before we wrap up. Is Irene Lyon, the autonomic system, what you've been learning there, and I want to make sure we touch on care for the caregiver, because you and I are sort of in the same boat with the caregiver thing, but it's so important.
I mean, again, the book is all about that. It's the self-care guide to alcohol-free living for busy mothers. But by mothers, we mean we just had to put that on there so that Amazon could find a word, right?
Right. People.
We couldn't say moms. We couldn't say moms, mother. So yeah, exactly. So whatever that looks like in your family. So we dedicated it to all carers, whether you're gay dads, whether you're trans parents, whether you're a nan or a granddad, or whether you are a step parent or an adoptive parent, or for people who are in caring roles. And I think we've had a real sea change shift in the UK because of COVID, where suddenly caring and being in helping professions and caring roles is receiving a little bit more of an accolade. But before that, I think, unseen and unsupported. And, I could just see a lot of other mums and carers being very, very depleted and then being frazzled. Then our autonomic nervous system kicking off, fight, flight, unable, ragged at the end of the day, a lot of burnout, and using alcohol to try to quench the flames, try to put out the flames, but obviously it's pouring alcohol on things, which flares it up even more. So that's sort of why we need to respect our pivotal position and how we do that in terms of boundaries, routines, treats, self-compassion, like all of that. And that's what the book is about, essentially, is how we, through bitter experience, came to put that toolkit together. For us as mums. Yeah, go on.
Can I ask you about the sober treats? I mean, I love the idea. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't want to do too much chocolate because that'll just make me fat. But, baths or Netflix feels like a treat. What other kinds of treats specifically do you recommend?
Yeah. I mean, I love a mixture of things. I think it's like whatever feels like a treat to you, right? Yeah. Because it's about that dopamine. Again, essentially what's going on is like we're trying to hack the dopamine loop and do harm reduction, essentially. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So we've got to get our dopamine from somewhere.
Yes, we do.
Like so just it, isn't it? So chickens. I love going to the senses. So I got a really lovely, I don't know where it is, Neal's Yard in the UK. They like do a beautiful woman's blend, essential oils, baths, like anything sensory. I love fluffy socks and blankets because I need a lot of GABA, like bring my nervous system down.
Okay.
I love fashion. And I love aesthetics. So I'm a real, like, I love a lipstick, just little treats. I'm not saying get a Prada habit or, can't afford that. Don't ruin yourself. But yeah, like, and things like nice teas, nice mugs.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing is just cultivating a mindset of sober treats. So what I try to do is like really rinse the moment. So like if you are having a coffee, really have a coffee, have a really nice coffee in a really nice mug and sit down and put your feet up if you possibly can and notice it, like be in it. So really turn towards that experience and go, right, I'm going to rinse this mother for everything it's got in this moment, right? Because otherwise we can. So I suppose it's about being mindful, right, isn't it?
But I like attention. I've never heard that phrase before. Rinse the moment.
Rinse that mother.
Rinse that motherfucker.
I think I made it up. It's not.
I love it. It's not a thing. It's a thing now. You're a famous author.
Rinse that mother.
I love it. It was so cute.
Yeah. So all of the things that make you feel like, because L'Oreal just nailed it, didn't they, with that? Because you're worth it.
Because you're worth it. Yeah.
It's like those. They really did. But it is those like little acts of kindness. Again, when I talked about the outside in, they're like saying you are worth it. Like, you're taking a moment, or, they're acts of love to the self when you don't necessarily have the internal resources to be able to say, I love myself. You're still acting it. You're doing acts of love and kindness.
Yeah.
So that's how I see sober treats.
I love that. Acts of kindness goes back to, I don't think I ever finished my thought about Carolyn Myss, but the acts of kindness invokes the law of cause and effect. Right. Yeah, okay. So Carolyn Myss, her definition of God, I can't believe I didn't finish that thought. She said God is law, but God is also love, right? And that makes sense to me in the way that there are magical things that surprise me that I couldn't have seen, right? And that feels like a little wink from the higher power, the universe, whatever you want to call it.
I love that.
I like it, both the sense of like, this higher power set up the laws of the universe to support us. We just don't know how to use them, right?
Yeah.
And then these little just moments of love that only me and the higher power know about. It's like a little wink that, I get you. I see you. So
I love that. I really love that. It is. Definition? Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I forgot why I went off on that tangent. Where were we? Anyways,
what else were we? Because that was the sober treats, wasn't it? And care for the carer. I know a lot of it because I heard somewhere recently someone can't remember what author said that she didn't like the idea of self-care because it put a lot of pressure on the individual. And I do think there's a nod to that in terms of, I think care for the carer is often about support, is about actually getting adequate support. So I would say that as well. So it's not all about like bubble baths and treats. It's like, what do I actually need? You know,
Girl,
what can I
care for the care for me means about limiting like self boundaries, like what you were saying about taking off a third of your to-do list, or taking a third off your calendar. The calendar and diary, that's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Diary, your diary. Take a third off your diary. But it's about setting limits for myself. I am not Superwoman. I do not have a limitless supply of attention and energy, and I need to save some for myself. I need to balance out receiving and giving so that I can go the distance, right?
Yeah. It is. It's a marathon.
It's a marathon. Sprint. What were you were going to share something that you were learning about from Irene Lyon, the autonomic system. What are you learning from her that's supporting your recovery?
So she's an amazing somatic practitioner who trained with Peter Levine and Kathy Kane, who they sort of, Peter Levine is famous for the polyvagal theory. Yeah. So the idea is that there's different parts of our nervous system. We know about fight and flight. And then we have the ventral vagal system. So we've got this bit here. I'm losing my vocabulary now.
It's at the end of the day for you.
It is. Yeah. So anyway, at the base of the sort of the lower portion of the spine is our dorsal vagal system. Okay. And then we have a ventral vagal system at the top, which is about being open and connected. So this is basically when we're dysregulated, we could be in fight, flight, or we can be in freeze response. It's just putting it really simply. And then that's when we get ill and we are trying to outsource to soothe our nervous systems with all manner of, what we're trying to numb out with. So it's got a big link to alcohol use disorder or different, addictive behaviors, right? And substance use disorders, because we're trying to, it's like Gabor Mate's work. It's trying to soothe. But what I find quite interesting about that is that, and again, there's the trauma piece, right? That's such a big thing for so many women. And that is a big piece in terms of addictive behaviors, alcohol use disorder. So her work is about working somatically with resequencing your nervous system. So getting it, if you might be stuck on survival stress because of early experiences. So it's not about talk therapy. It's not about going and talking it all through and re-traumatizing. It's about certain exercises that we can do. It's a bit like Feldenkrais method, where you can just reorganize. It's basically reorganizing yourself so that your nervous system can be in a state of flow. So
reorganizing your nervous system.
Yeah.
You mentioned an exercise. Is there something specific you can share?
There are so many. But this is a really easy one. I mean, this is a big theory, right? And people do PhDs and long studies on it. So I don't want to give a bit of that bit where a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, right? So, but I think it's safe, because also you've got to be, as practitioners, we know we have to be trauma informed, right? Sure. So you don't want to say, oh, well, you should do this breathing exercises and go really, because that might be traumatizing to someone. Okay, so but one thing that is quite useful, obviously breathing, but if you orientate yourself, if you look with curiosity, whilst also being aware of your breath, but like just look around your room and look at maybe a plant or look at something, and then look with curiosity, that basically activates the ventral vagal bit, which is the most evolved mammalian bit, which can soothe you, because you become curious and you might feel a little bit of a buzz. I always feel a little bit of relaxing around my shoulders. So, it can be really nice to go for a walk if you're feeling stressed out. Maybe you just go for a walk and you look at things, and you just notice things, and having that curiosity, can be really, really soothing. So, I'd say that's a little takeaway. But again, it's
super easy, right? Just be present, look at things with curiosity. Yeah, I think that we typically tune out what we see in our environment. And my husband is practicing some Buddhist stuff, and we had this conversation about, have you ever thought about like all the people that are involved in, like, I'm holding, my coffee mug. It's like all the things that had to happen and all the people that were involved in the making of this single cup of coffee. It's like all the people that made it, people that harvested the beans, people that processed the shipping, like so many things had to happen just for me to have my simple. And it's curiosity.
It is curiosity, and what you're doing, you're activating your ventral vagal, because you're thinking about the connections with other people, and then what that does is that works on those relational centers of the brain, which we know are very good from getting you from back brain into front brain, which is a lot of recovery stuff, right? The neuroscience of joyful recovery is so much about helping us get back into our front brain, our human brain,
getting out of the reptilian survival mode to create.
And the reptilian survival mode will be the dorsal vagal, so it's all to do with all of that theory, but it just goes down into your spine and your nervous system. And
this is like how science is explaining the mystical, because in yoga you always see the picture of the person meditating and the colored lights all up there.
The chakras.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's cool how science is explaining the mystical.
I love it. I love it where the old mysteries and the shiny new neuroscience come together like best buddies. It's amazing.
Do you know who you are going to absolutely love? Not just because he's super hot, but Dr. Andrew Huberman is this amazing neuroscientist out of Stanford, California. And he was on the Rich Roll podcast.
I love Rich Roll.
Oh, do you? Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm currently obsessed with the Rich Roll interview with David Goggins because I'm trying to get in shape. But he did a 2-hour-long interview with Dr. Andrew Huberman. Girl, I have watched that interview in its entirety at least 6 times.
Amazing.
You are going to love it. And he's super cute too. But he has an Instagram channel where he does neuroscience lessons all the time, and he talks a lot about the things that you're talking about.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like it's amazing what we can learn now. I love the freaking internet. Like, it got really bad press, and it's like, oh no, now with COVID and lockdown, we're really need it. We do. And also that the kind of recovery space and the learning space is amazing, isn't it?
I mean, that's really one of the things I do for fun is I'm endlessly fascinated with how to change human behavior and human optimization. And there's so much potential. And it's so sad because, when people first show up to recovery, they're so hopeless, right? They're so lost. They're so defeated. And then we get recovery, and then suddenly we realize that there is endless potential, endless opportunities if we just get our mind right. We need to stop poisoning it with drugs and alcohol. And when we do that, the whole world the whole universe opens.
Oh my God. 100%. It's like proper gifts.
Yeah, I love that.
Well,
listen, I am so grateful we got a chance to meet.
We did it.
You're darling. I just love the work that you and Mandy are doing together. And I think I'm going to call you Candy, Sober Candy.
I love it.
You're my Sober Candy girls. I love you. Yeah, and I want everybody to go out and get your book called Love Yourself Sober, a self-care guide to alcohol-free living for busy mothers. I will leave links to all this in the show notes along with lovesober.com, your organization. And listen, thank you so much for your time and all the work that you do. You guys are just lovely. I just love you guys.
Thanks, Alina. And let's hope we can meet up. I think She Recovers next year.
Are you going to Miami?
We were supposed to go this last year. I'm going. I'll see you there.
I will absolutely be there. And it's so funny because we've racked up so many frequent flyer miles. I could go to the UK twice and still have.
Come on over. What are you waiting for?
Well, listen, you have an amazing day, and we'll talk again real soon.
Yeah, lovely to meet you.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.